been a while, actually a few years since the last time we've seen the crew of the Orville in the two-parter time travelling finale. So what's happened? As always, I'm Al, this is the Geek in Review, and we're going to be talking about Season 3, Episode 1 of the Orville New Horizons, so if you haven't seen it, you know the drill. Well, it's now on Hulu, and it seems from the trailers to be a much bigger production. They've hired some Star Trek people behind the scenes like Doug Drexler, so the question is, with Strange New Worlds on at the same time, which is the better Star Trek, I suppose? And we get the opener from the teaser of the huge battle between the Union and the Kalons, and yeah, the CG definitely stands up to what we're seeing in New Trek at the moment easily, but as most people guessed, this is all a dream. The ship's in dry dock, Lamar needs Isaac's help with the refit, and they now have their own sort of Voyager astrometrics lab. And that's not the only Voyager comparison in this episode, I'll get to that later on. And I did love the bit at the start with Isaac trying to respond to the joke. There wasn't a lot of humour in the trailer, so I was glad to see it, at least at the start of the episode. And this episode is all about Isaac. He's getting used to life on board the ship with people being uncomfortable with him after last season's attack. And the scars are still there for everyone and they're on display. There's a new ensign, and she tells Isaac where she was during the Kalon attack last season, and it's sort of like the opening episode of Deep Space Nine, where you see Wolf 359 from Sisko's point of view. But when we're seeing the flashback, the ship escape and the explosion looked brilliant. This episode is being a little bit hard and heavy after not being on screen for a few years. There's a lot of hate for what happened between the Kalon and the Union, and it looks as if this is going to be one of the main themes of the season. Life aboard the ship isn't content with Isaac on board. Ensign Burke, a new character, is the prime suspect after there's some graffiti spread in Isaac's lab. And this new character comes on like a storm. I can't wait to see her and Kelly lock horns later on in the season, because there's definitely a chance that that's going to happen, and she just tells Captain Mercer like it is every time they have an encounter. As I said, the ship's getting refitted in dry dock, but it's getting more than that. It's getting some external upgrades with its own sort of Delta Flyer-esque ship as well. And there's a huge long scene of them testing this, and for me it was a little bit too long. Yeah, it was fun, and that's what this show was about, but again, for an opener, it just felt a little bit too long for me. And if I'm being honest, the ship's more like a Viper from Battlestar Galactica when I think about it than the Delta Flyer. And it's Malloy that's piloting this new ship, and after he's done the trials, he does confess to the new ensign that he's in the anti-Isaac crowd as well, which surprised me, because Malloy's the sort of all-round nice guy in the ship. And Marcus, who was previously pretty close to Isaac and seen him as a sort of father figure, is a culprit behind the graffiti. And yeah, I think for this first episode, this new Orville for me is leaning too much into the drama. The show isn't as light-hearted as it was, and maybe it is because of this new longer format, I don't know. We're going to have to wait until we get more episodes. And what do I mean by it's a little bit too deep and dark? Well, Isaac shuts himself down, so essentially commits suicide to avoid any more issues on board. But as a plan to bring Isaac back, but they need the new angry ensign's help to do it. So she's the sort of new Wesley in a weird way. I get that she's angry, but she comes off as a stroppy teen quite a lot in this first episode. It is only our first episode, and I'm willing to see how the character develops, but at the moment, I could take it or leave it. But then the episode goes into territory treaded by Strange New Worlds only last week, when they need to hide from a Kalon ship, and they do the whole flying into the planet thing. And they do what I said in the Orville that they should have done in Strange New Worlds last week, which is fly a shuttle into the enemy ship. And man, I'm glad to see I was right about that. It was just on the wrong show. And it's weird that the Orville took 5 minutes to do what Strange New World took an entire episode to do last week. But anyway, they managed to bring Isaac back, and all's well that ends well. Again, I don't think this story beat with the anti-Kalon stuff is going to continue. It seems to be too large to do it for an entire episode for it not to be picked up later on in the season. But I hope this longer format doesn't mean that they're going to focus on it too much. Now, that's not to say that I didn't like this show. I did really like what I was seeing here. Everything was good. But I do miss the light-hearted humour. There was no banter really between Malloy, Mercer and Kelly. Bortus hardly had anything to do whatsoever in this episode. And the fact that it's been about an outcast and suicide, yeah, that's pretty dark for an opener, especially after 2.5 years. While the show has dealt with serious themes in the past, I think again this is maybe too much too soon. This could have been spread over the space of several episodes to help build the story up, but as always, that's just my view. And I've got to say, it is going into new Trek territory with all these little speeches peppered in there as well. But what do you think about that? It's just something that I noticed at the end when the Doctor was speaking to Isaac. I thought, man, this is like the third or fourth speech we've had this episode. But the show is definitely trying to do more of its own thing and establish its own universe here. I just hope that episode 2 is a little bit lighter than episode 1. If you've made it this far, as always, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I'm doing new videos all the time. My name's Al, thanks for watching.